Back in the days of the ZX Spectrum, Ultimate Play the game was regarded as one of the true innovators for the 8-bit system. It was almost a given that any game released by the publisher was not only going to be a surefire hit, but was also one that was guaranteed to be a great game. Growing up as a gamer in the 70s and 80s, I bypassed the Spectrum completely. I started off with a Pong clone in the mid-70s, but my first computer was a VIC-20, before moving on to a Commodore 64, so I missed out on most of the offerings from Ultimate. But one day, in a local computer shop, you can imagine my surprise when I saw their classic game Jet Pac staring back at me from the shelves for the VIC. I never expected to see one of their games released for Commodore's entry-level system, so after a little pester-pair with my parents, I eagerly loaded it when we got home. The platform shoot-'em-up didn't disappoint, and it's still a game I return to over 35 years later. It's a simple concept. Your ship has crashed on an alien planet, and your jetpack-equipped astronaut has to reassemble the craft, picking up the 3 separate parts, and dropping them into place on top of each other. Then collect fuel pods, drop them onto your ship to refuel it, and once the ship is fully refueled, just enter it to take off and on to the next stage. Meanwhile, you're under attack from endless hordes of aliens out to stop you, and you have nothing more than a single laser to defend yourself. The gameplay was basic, yet fiendishly addictive, and it was a crying shame that it was only ever released for the Spectrum, VIC-20 and BBC. At the time, C64 owners were jealous of Sinclair fans who had access to the Ultimate range, and it wasn't until a couple of years later when some of their games started to appear on the Commodore machine. Fast forward to 2015, and along came Rocket Smash EX from RGCD. Originally written in 2013 for RGCD's 16K cartridge competition, this updated version was programmed by John Lønningdal with graphics and sound by Saul. It's an unofficial port of the game to the Commodore 64 and attempts to bring the game up to date. The gameplay itself is almost identical to the Ultimate Classic, building your rocket, refueling before moving from stage to stage and world to world. Gems, as with the original, can be collected for bonus points, but the team have added a few extra twists to this version. The first thing you notice if you had played the original is the layout of the platforms. In Jet Pac they remain the same for several stages, only changing once you get a new ship to assemble. Here there's a new platform layout for each new stage, so you don't get the chance to become complacent over the game's level design, and it helps keep you on your toes during play. Another new feature, and one that changes gameplay dramatically, is the use of an oxygen meter for your astronaut. In the original, you could simply fly around, collect fuel, gems, and shoot aliens as much as you wanted, racking up the points. As your laser wrapped around on screen, you could, if you wanted, find a safe spot and just play for a high score and not worry about playing the game normally. That's not the case in Rocket Smash EX. Instead, your oxygen is steadily depleting as you play, and once it runs out, you lose one of your lives. This can be topped up by collecting one of the oxygen tanks that drop randomly during play, the same way that fuel tanks appear. However, these don't fill your oxygen completely, so you have to keep moving all the time and try to complete each stage as quickly as possible. It's a great twist that speeds up gameplay and ensures that the pace never slows down for a moment. Controls are fast and responsive, and using the joystick to move the astronaut, pushing up to use the thrust on the jetpack, and fire shoots your laser. Essentially, these are the same controls as the VIC-20 version from 1983. The Spectrum was slightly more refined, allowing the astronaut to hover as well when using the keyboard controls, but for a pure arcade experience, I always preferred the faster action of the VIC over the Spectrum version. As for the gameplay, it's an incredibly addictive shooter, with all of the addictive qualities of the original are still here, delivering all of the non-stop frantic arcade action that you could ask for. Despite the simple concept, it's the completely random placement of both the ship components and fuel pods and semi-random movement of the aliens attacking you that's keeping the game compelling. With no two games ever playing the same, you can't plan ahead or rely on memory to complete the game as you can with a lot of old arcade shooters, so it's all about reflexes and skill, just the way I like them. As you'd expect, the graphics have been given a major overhaul. Gone are the single colour sprites and backgrounds, and everything has now been replaced by glorious full colour visuals. The ship and fuel pods have now received a metallic looking makeover, movement and animation is much smoother and faster, and despite the lower resolution of the Commodore 64 due to the increase in colour, it seems more detailed. There are also now cutscenes between worlds enhancing the game further. Sound is the same. While I felt that the music was somewhat bland and certainly not up to the usual high standards I've come to expect from Saul Cross's other work, the sound effects are superb and are enhanced further with sampled speech that really bring the game to life. Overall, not only is this a great update of an all-time classic, but I'd stick my neck out and say that this version is actually better than the Spectrum original. It's more polished, faster paced, and with better sound and visuals, take the original to that next step further, and it's an essential arcade game to add to your collection. It's available as a download for use with emulators and SD card adapters on real C64 hardware from itch.io, where you can name your own price. RGCD have also released a cartridge version of the game to use on normal Commodore 64s, which features a hidden bonus game. It's also available on cassette or disc from Psytronik, and all the links are in the description. As for our score, that's coming up next.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the like button and leave us a comment below. Also, spare a moment to share this video on Twitter, Facebook, and all your social media pages. To get updates on all of our latest videos delivered straight to your inbox, subscribe now using the link on the screen.